Right. Hello, everyone. Greetings from India. My name is Ujaval Gandhi, and thank you for coming to my talk. Today, I'm going to talk about processing toolbox. But before I start, I would like to thank the organizers for making this conference really accessible and allowing this opportunity to come and talk to you, though I'm located thousands of miles away from North America. In this talk, I'm going to give you a tour of some of my favorite and lesser known toolbox algorithms. A brief intro about me. Many of you may have seen my tutorials at qgistutorials.com. I've been writing and maintaining those for over a decade now. I also run a company called Spatial Thoughts, which is completely focused on training. We are one of the QGIS certifying organizations and offer online training for QGIS, Python, and Google Earth Engine. I'm also a visiting researcher at University of Johannesburg, where I teach urban planning and GIS using QGIS. So the structure of the talk today, it's going to be hands-on. I'm just going to do live demos and cover a whole bunch of tools. So let's just dive in. This is QGIS 3.14. You can open up the toolbox from the processing menu. The toolbox contains a variety of tools. They are organized by providers. The tools that start with Q, they are the core tools. This shipped with your QGIS installation, and they are written and maintained by the QGIS development team. You also have other providers such as GRASS and Saga. These are other GIS systems, but you have access to those tools via the toolbox algorithms. You can also install plugins. There's a new plugin called White Box Tools. You can install such plugins and it adds more tools to your processing toolbox. You can run a little script here that tells you how many tools you have. And in my current QGIS installation, I have over 1,000 tools. That means you have a wide range of tools that are available to you to do a variety of geoprocessing tasks. And this talk, I'm going to give you a glimpse of some of the tools, and that gives you a flavor for what kind of things you can do with the toolbox. We'll start with this tool called Create Points Layer from Table. We'll browse to an Excel file. And this tool allows you to bring non-spatial data, such as data in this Excel file, as a spatial layer QGIS. And the structure of this file is I have a latitude and longitude column, which I can configure here and can import this file as a points layer. If you can work with some business data or even some weather data that is in such formats as a CSV or Excel file, this is the easiest way to bring them in a single step from Excel file to a points layer directly in QGIS. Great, so we have a points layer now. Let's bring in the US states layer. Next, maybe I just want to work with the weather station in this one state. You can do this in multiple ways. You can create a new layer from the selected polygon, select all the weather stations that fall within that and save them out to be a new layer. But there are a set of tools in the toolbox that allow you to do all of this in a single step. You search for extract, you'll find tools such as extract by attribute, extract by expression, and let's use this one called extract by location. I want to extract the weather stations that intersect the polygons from this layer, but I want to use the selected features only. And this is a feature of the toolbox where each layer can be used as a whole or with the selected features only. So this worked, and now I've got a new layer with only the weather stations falling within the Wisconsin state. You could see there's a warning here that says there's no spatial index. And spatial index allows you to speed up your operations, and it's very useful when working with large data sets. If you see this warning, you should definitely go ahead and run this tool called Create Spatial Index. It's a pretty simple tool. I'm going to run it on the points layer. It's going to go ahead and create the spatial index for you. Now I'm just going to remove this layer and run the same operation again. A tip is that if you want to repeat some processing you did earlier, or you made a mistake and you want to go back and change a parameter, you can go to processing history, and the toolbox maintains a history of all your tool runs. So I can just double click on this, and it's going to populate this tool with the same settings that I had earlier. Really convenient. And now when I run it, you can see the warning is gone and the tool ran a little faster. So now I have the weather stations in the state of Wisconsin. Let's bring in some weather observations. I have those one file per station. And the data looks something like this, where you have a station ID, and for each day, there is a data value, which is the amount of snowfall on that day. And this is the data for January 2020. And since the data comes in as one file per station, I have over 400 files here. It'll be nice to bring them in as a single table. So you can use this tool called merge vector layers. The tabular data is also a vector layer, so you can use this tool on them. You can bring them in directly into this tool via this add directory input. And now you can see I have 424 tables that will be merged and brought in as a single table. Really useful when you're working with large data that you don't want to bring into QGIS first and then run processing. You can run them directly. You can browse to them directly from the tools and bring them in. Great. So now I have this table. I have for each weather station ID, I have now snowfall measurement for each day. Let's say I want to compute the total snowfall for each station in the January. I can sum up this data value and group them by the station IDs to get that result. So this is the kind of computations called group stats. And in the earlier version of QGIS, you had to use a plugin called group stats to do this. Not anymore. If you just search for group stats, you'll find this tool called statistics by categories. And this also shows that you don't need to remember the tool name, just search for what you want to do and you'll find it. So I'm going to do stats on this field called data value and then group them by the station IDs. The result of this would be a table where for each station ID, I'll get various stats on this one particular field. So the sum field here contains the total snowfall for the month of January. Now we can just do a table join with the points and I'll get a spatial layer with the total snowfall. Spatial joins can be done using this. You can search for join and you'll find this multiple tools. We can do join attributes by field value, where we can do a table join. You can also do spatial join using the join attribute by location. There's a fairly new tool called join attribute by nearest, where if there is the layers that you want to join don't intersect, but you want to pick the nearest feature from another layer, this tool is really helpful. Let's just go and do a table join. I want to join my extracted layer with the newly created group stats layer, and I just want to pick some field. And now I've got a spatial layer where for each station, I've got the total amount of snowfall in millimeters for the year. So I'm almost done, but my attribute table looks kind of a mess. It'll be nice to organize and make it a little neater. So that brings me to one of my favorite tools. If you take away anything from this talk, is that you can use this tool called Refactor Fields. This is a really powerful tool. It allows you to add, delete, reorder, and even run some computations on field all in a single operation. You can select and delete the columns that you don't need. You can even reorder them. You can rename this. Maybe let's rename this column to total snow. You can also apply expression on the source data. So my source data contains values in millimeters. Maybe you want to divide it and convert to inches. So now let's just save it out to an output file. Just going to call Wisconsin snow. So now I have this really nice attribute table where I have the weather stations, the names, and the total snowfall in inches. Right? Cool. Moving on, the next example that I want to show. So the next tool I want to show is called Import Geotype Photos. This allows you to bring in your photos with lat-long information as points during QGIS. Nowadays, if you take photos from your phone and your GPS is on, the lat-long information is captured and is part of the photo metadata. If you used apps such as Open Camera, you can also capture the view direction, the compass direction, along with the lat-long. Here are some photos I've taken, and it contains the lat-long as well as the azimuth information. And QGIS can read that directory of photos, and I'll get an output layer, which is the points layer. You can see I got the lat-long as well as the direction field along. Let me add a background map so you can see the data more clearly. There's a tool called Create Wedge Buffers that allows you to do a nice visualization out of this data. Let me set the azimuth to be the direction field and create buffer like this. So this allows you to show your data in an interesting way and also useful to see which areas were covered, and you get this nice view cone from your data. Another tool you can look at is if you have trajectory data or movement data, and such as say bird movement data or GPS points, and if you want to create paths from it or lines from it, earlier you had to use some plugins. There is a tool called Points to Path that allows you to take a points layer, have an order field such as timestamp, and you get a line here as an output. Pretty useful if you work with some movement data. Let's do a fun one. You might think of processing toolbox as meant for only the geoprocessing tools, but you can see there's a cartography tool, and there's an interesting algorithm called topological coloring. What this tool does is that it, given a polygon layer, it's going to allow you to color it so that no adjacent polygons have the same color. And the way it works is it adds a field called color ID to your input layer. Then you can use this categorized symbology to color your map. So I have a new field called color ID that was added by the tool. And now I can color my map using that. And I have a map of the US with all the states colored using 5 colors, and more states have the same color. All right. So we so far covered the tools that we've used from the toolbox, but some of the tools are really useful to be used in a model. Moving on. The next tool I want to show you is a tool called download file. This it's a pretty simple tool, allows you to input an URL, maybe to an FTP site or an intranet site or a web HTTP site, and it allows you to download this data to your disk. So let's say we want to download this data from firms which produces active map of active fires. And this is a constantly updating file. So every time I download, I get the fires in the last 24 hours. So let's just copy this link and download this. Save it to a file called. It's going to bring that file in and download it. And I got this points layer. Now you may say this is not very efficient. I could do this as easily or even easier using my browser. But what this allows you to do is that now you can use this tool in your model and automate this process. So let me show you this model that I built, which downloads the file from the same firm's site. It also uses the base layer, such as a map of the US states layer, and clips it to that boundary, and also applies a style. So there's a tool called set layer style. So let's run this tool and what happens. I'm not doing anything. The tool is going to download this data, clip it, style it, and add it to my map. So you can see I got same data set, but now it's clipped to the base layer and also nicely styled. So this is really helpful when you need to download and process the data from the same URL, or even if the URL is changing slightly, you can set up an expression so that every day when you run this tool, it fetches the right data set. Next, I want to show you an example of a custom tool. Say I want to take this whole workflow a step further. I want to automatically download the data, process it, style it, and also save this out as a map. So I wrote a tool which allows you to take your current map view and render it to a map template. So let's see how I can use this along with the tool here. So the tool is called Export Layout as PDF. And I have a blog post that shows exactly how to do this. And I can use a template file. I have a map template here. I can set a custom title. Let's see what happens when I run this. So my model is going to download the latest data, process it, apply a style file, and then render a map template out of it. So here you go. I have a PDF file that was created completely by the model. And this is really useful to automate some of the workflows like that. The last tool that I want to show, it comes from a plugin. There's a plugin called ORS Tools, which allows you to do network analysis using the Open Route Service API. And this API uses the OpenStreetMap data and allows you to do a bunch of really sophisticated networking analysis using the data. So let me bring in a base map. So this data set is the BART station locations in San Francisco. And this is the light rail station. Say you want to figure out where to stay in San Francisco so that you are within 15 minutes of walking distance between them. And I don't want a plain buffer. I want to compute the actual distance that along the road network. So I can use this tool called Isochronos from layer and set my mode to foot walking. We compute the 15 minutes, I suppose. And you can see there's no data download happening. All the data is already in the server. The server is going to compute the isochronos based on this request, and you just get the results. Really useful. You can see these areas are all within 15 minutes of walking distance between the station. It's interesting, it's picking up the ferry routes as well. All right, so that's it. I know there are a whole bunch of tools, but this was just a preview of some of the tools that you can use, and definitely explore the processing toolbox more. I learn from it every day. Just search and you'll find some tool that helps you in analysis. I can take questions now.
Hi, Ujaval. One question that came up is about the conditional branching tool in the graphical modeler. Do you have any examples of that, or can you describe it?
Yeah, so this is a kind of a long-awaited tool that was released for 3.14. And what it does is, like, you have a model where you can have a condition where on one condition output, whether it's true, you do a different processing. On the output is different, you do another processing. So there's a tool called conditional branching in the processing toolbox that you can use in the modeler and allows you to do it. I don't have an example right now, but I believe in the changelog, there was an example that showed how to set this up. But it's fairly new, and I think it enables a lot of cases where in earlier days you have to build multiple models and run them in sequence. Here you can just have a single model that can do different things based on the output of your result.
Great. You also, at the beginning, mentioned quickly a plugin to install whitebox tools in the toolbox. Can you explain what whitebox tools are and what's in there for people that aren't familiar?
Yeah, so this is an open source project similar to GRASS and Saga, where there's a collection of tools and you install it, you download a binary, and it works. It's a cross-platform toolbox, and you install a plugin for QGIS, which gives you access to run those tools from the toolbox. And they have over 400 tools, and it's all open source and really powerful tool. They have image processing tools and LiDAR processing tools, etc. And I find them, when doing image processing or some of the operation, I find them faster. They're all kind of multi-threaded as well. So I find them faster and better structured than, say, GRASS or Saga. So I've been kind of using them, and it's really great. It's still in beta. It's not fully stable yet, but you definitely install it. And I've used things like, say, I wanted a view shed, complete a view shed, and there's a nice view shed tool where you have multiple points and creates a view shed out of that. And last week I was exploring histogram matching between satellite imagery, and they have a histogram matching tool there. So really nice collection of tools, which where the QGIS doesn't really have many raster tools in the default toolbox, and this adds those as well. So definitely, I'm pretty impressed at this collection and pretty excited when it actually becomes stable and released.
And I think we have time for one or two more. We have a question about the export to PDF. How is the PDF tool different from export to PDF?
So the export to PDF works if you are in print layouts. So there you create a map and export your map. So if you wanted to do this automatically, you can't go and click this button. So this tool uses the same APIs, but it's a Python code that calls that export function from the processing toolbox. And the idea for this model that I showed was that if you had to do this every day, and I knew somebody who had this job, like every morning they'll come download some weather data, join it with some of the internal tables, and spend an hour creating this map and pushing it to like the internet site. And you can now do this in just a click of a button, where you download the data and everything, and your map gets generated, and you can even push it to some of the place. So all this is automated, and it helps you save time, and it's less error prone, etc. So this was an example of kind of using the same functionality from a processing toolbox model.
Fantastic. So I think we're just about out of time, and I just was wondering if there's anything else that you wanted to add at the end of your talk.
No, thanks for the opportunity here. I would like to remind folks, if you enjoy this talk and if you've been enjoying this conference, do consider donating to the QGIS project. This is a free conference, and a lot of effort has gone on by the community to organize and run this conference. And if you can just visit qgis.org and give some monetary donation, whatever you can afford, I think it'll be really great for the project, and would appreciate that. So that's it. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much, Ujaval.